Will the people who normally buy the product be able to do so? Or will there be a tariff attached to it by Mr. Trump that will dissuade people from buying it?
Richard Wolff, a critical economist known for analyzing capitalism's flaws, argues that Trump's tariffs were political theater that hurt consumers while failing to solve America's deeper economic problems.
The fact that the United States is the biggest debtor country in the world.
The United States is the largest debtor nation in the world, carrying a massive national debt that reflects decades of deficits, military spending, tax cuts, and reliance on borrowing to sustain its global role.
Has to pay whatever the price of that commodity is, and then on top of it, pay the tariff.
Trump's tariffs directly raise the cost of imported goods, forcing companies to pass those expenses onto consumers and driving up everyday prices in the US.
This one is about tariffs, and I call it Tariffs Bite Back. And I call it that because the tariffs are producing all kinds of consequences that ought to worry us, and very few to confirm the promises Mr. Trump made when he began his program. I can see why Mr. Trump likes the tariffs. He apparently does not need the Congress to agree, even though clearly that was the intent of the separation of powers when the Constitution gave the Congress the monetary purse holding. He can apparently impose them at will, and he does it.
Richard Wolff often criticizes Trump's tariffs as misleading economic tools.
Changing from day to day, from hour to hour. Everybody is complaining around the world, American businesses and foreign businesses alike, about this quote-unquote volatility. No business can make plans not knowing what in the world the market situation is going to be. Will the people who normally buy the product be able to do so, or will there be a tariff attached to it by Mr. Trump that will dissuade people from buying it? And what do you do in that situation? Many businesses are holding back on decisions about how to invest money. And when they do that, when they don't invest, then they're not engaged in activities that include paying taxes.
He explains that they were promoted as measures to protect American workers and rebuild domestic industry.
So the money coming into the government from a tariff that is paid has to have subtracted from it the taxes that aren't being paid because people affected by tariffs are holding back from their normal and previous economic activities. The Yale Economics Lab estimates that the tariffs in their first 6 months, that's how long we've had Mr. Trump's government, brought in maybe $50 billion. And from that, you would have to subtract whatever businesses are going out of business because of the tariffs, and I'm going to give you some examples. Whatever businesses are doing less business and therefore paying fewer taxes than they used to, all of those are subtractions from the extra 50 that the tariffs bring in.
In reality, he argues, they functioned more as political gestures than as effective economic strategies.
So the net effect of the tariffs now is in the 20 to 30 billion, maybe a bit more. And I can assure you, in a government budget that is counted in the trillions, 20, 30, 40 billion is a small potato and will not change the fact that the United States is the biggest debtor country in the world, whose debts are now rising significantly faster than the GDP, the productivity of the economy as a whole, which has been and is a warning sign. It turns out, in ways I'm about to take you through, that tariffs can bite back whoever it is that tries to impose them on the rest of the world.
The tariffs created headlines. They fueled nationalist pride.
So here we go. Let's take a look. One of the countries subjected to the highest tariffs has been China. China used to be a major exporter of goods and services, particularly goods, to the United States. The tariffs mean that an American, business or individual, who buys a commodity produced in China has to pay whatever the price of that commodity is, and then on top of it, pay the tariff. And as I have explained many times, the tariff is a tax imposed by Mr. Trump and paid by the American company that brings foreign-made products into the United States to conduct its business. For example, a huge amount of what you can buy at Walmart or through Amazon or at Target or any other store comes from China.
But they did not address the root causes of economic decline in the United States.
So now the company, the American company, Target, Walmart, Amazon, has to pay China to get the product and then pay Uncle Sam whatever the tariff is on top of it. Well, here's the truth. Yale Lab shows, as other documents do, that foreigners are not lowering their prices because Americans have to pay more, having to pay this tariff tax to Uncle Sam. Mr. Trump may have hoped for that. Maybe that's why he kept saying in words that were funny because they were wrong, that tariffs are somehow paid by them, that the tariff is a burden on China.
According to Wolff, the main effect of Trump's tariffs was to raise costs for ordinary consumers.
No, China doesn't pay the tariffs against China. Americans do. And when Americans do, you might hope that the foreign country, knowing that Americans have to pay more because the tariff is there, will lower their price and therefore, in a way, pick up the cost of the tariff. But they're not doing that. We can already see after 6 months of hefty tariff impositions that there is little or no sign that foreign producers of goods coming here are lowering their prices.
Imported goods became more expensive. US companies that relied on global supply chains paid higher prices for parts and materials.
And you know what that means? It means that the higher price, because American companies are paying tariffs, are either going to eat into the profits of those companies, or they're going to pass on the tax they now have to pay, that tariff, to the rest of us, to consumers, and we have to pay. So, for example, in recent days, a lot of publicity attached to Mr. Trump's putting an enormous 50% tariff on Brazil, the largest country in Latin America, a very important country in the whole world economy, and a country that happens to be the largest single source of coffee coming into the United States.
Those costs were then passed on to workers and families. Instead of strengthening industry, the tariffs made daily life harder for many Americans.
That means that the companies bringing coffee from Brazil into the United States are now going to have to pay whatever it costs per pound of that coffee to get it from Brazil shipped to an American port. And then the company has to pay Uncle Sam 50% of that in addition to get that coffee into the company's hands. Mr. Trump seems to enjoy doing that. He now puts tariffs on countries because he doesn't like who they are or not prosecuting in their courts.
The critical and outspoken economist Richard Wolff argues that Trump's tariffs, imposed at his own whim, expose how economic policy is twisted into a tool of personal power rather than collective benefit.
There's no way for them to decide, even if they pulled up steaks from the factory they have in China or the factory they have in Brazil.
The United States pulled factories out of Brazil and China to weaken their industries and reassert its own economic dominance.
The American government can only tax Americans, and that's what it does. It taxes us as individuals, and it also taxes enterprises.
Wolff tells the truth. A country should not have the right to tax another country just for its own pleasure, as done by Trump.
The whole issue of tariffs, ever since Mr. Trump decided that throwing these at every other country in the world was some kind of clever, smart, or strong action he could and would take to strangle up the world trade system. Is it a good piece of theater? It is. No one has ever done that before. Hit the entire world with a tariff all at once, and with many of the tariffs so high that it would basically bring trade between the tariffed country and the United States to an end. It made it impossible for businesses to plan where or how or when to invest, because the profitability of any option they might pursue depends on the tariffs. And Mr. Trump not only created them and threw them at countries, but he threw them helter-skelter.
Richard Wolff believes Trump's tariff policies are a mix of deception and political theater.
They went up one day, down the next day. They were suspended for 12 days, for 20 days, for 90 days. You couldn't make sense of it. You couldn't keep up with it. And you weren't going to take the risk of moving production from one place to another based on something that was so herky-jerky as Mr. Trump's tariffs. That's why you haven't seen any mass movement of production from the rest of the world to America. Bringing those jobs back that he talked about, lying. He hasn't brought them back. And he hasn't brought them back for a very good reason. There's no way for them to decide, even if they pulled up steaks from the factory they have in China or the factory they have in Brazil, why bring it to the United States? As you're going to see in a few moments, the United States is the last place they'd move production as these tariffs get imposed, deposed, postponed, raised, lowered, and no end in sight.
He says they are presented as protection for American workers. In practice, they often benefit big corporations.
Mr. Trump seems to enjoy doing that. He now puts tariffs on countries because he doesn't like who they are or not prosecuting in their courts. I mean, it doesn't seem to make any difference. So no company can plan. But that's the least of the lying. To show you how deep the lying is, how many layers of lies there are here, I'm going to take you through very quickly how the tariffs actually work. Here we go. Tariffs are a tax. That's all they are. The word tariff is the funny name for historical reasons given to a tax that attaches to importing goods and services. A good or a service made outside the United States, when it enters the United States to be sold here or to be used as an input for producing something here, that is an import.
They raise consumer prices. They distort trade flows. They fuel international tensions.
That's the word we use. Produced outside, brought inside. A tariff is a tax on that import. Well, then who pays it? The answer, whoever does the importing. Most imports in America are brought in by companies, by enterprises, capitalist enterprises. I'm going to give you some examples. Walmart brings in tons of stuff from around the world in order to sell it in Walmart department stores across America. If you've ever been to a Walmart, you've looked at the label, where is that toy produced, where is that shirt produced, you'll see that the vast majority of time it's from outside the United States.
Wolff argues that the lies surrounding tariffs are part of a larger strategy. They frame economic pain as patriotism.
The same is true of Target. The same is true of Amazon. The same is true of fill in the blank in retail. Here's another example. American automobiles, the ones put together in Detroit or in Ohio, use many imported parts. A carburetor, a brake shoe, a shock absorber, whatever it might be. Those are imports because those goods that come from outside, being imports, will have to pay a tariff, a tax. And to whom does the tax go? Uncle Sam. So when Mr. Trump says, I'm going to hit China with a tariff, he is lying. We, the American government, cannot tax the people of another country, no more than the Chinese government taxes us.
They redirect anger from elites to foreigners. They hide the real causes of inequality. They make working people believe they are defended when they are actually exploited.
That's not how it works or ever has. The American government can only tax Americans, and that's what it does. It taxes us as individuals, and it also taxes enterprises. It taxes our income, it taxes their profits. That's how it works. So now let's follow the bouncing tariff ball. If something comes into the United States, the company that brings it in has to pay a tax to Uncle Sam. It's an American company most of the time, although foreign companies based in America also bring imports. Whoever brings it in, they pay the tax to Uncle Sam. So the vast majority of all tariff taxes are paid by Americans to Washington, D.C.
For Wolff, tariffs under Trump symbolize a dangerous pattern, a government that uses nationalism as a mask.
So no more let's talk lying about tariffs being things we do to punish another country. What does the American company do that has to pay a tariff to Uncle Sam because Mr. Trump said so? If that company used to bring in a $10,000 piece of equipment and there's now a 50% tariff on it, then that company has to pay, $10,000 worth, if that's what the number was I just used, $10,000 to get the machine, and another $5,000, 50% of that, to Uncle Sam. So the final cost to the American company for the $10,000 machine that they used to spend $10,000 on is now raised to $15,000. Any American who wants to buy it will have to pay $15,000 instead of $10,000 because of the tariff.
A leader who manipulates facts, a system where truth is optional, and an economy where power serves the few at the expense of the many.
But what I've just told you means that tariffs raise prices.